There is a quiet moment when you realize you've been moving all day without actually moving forward. A subtle sting settles in your chest as you sense the gap between effort and growth. It's small, but it lingers. People drift instead of growing. The drift rarely announces itself. It appears as small hesitations, small delays, small escapes. A day slides by, then another, and the mind keeps promising that momentum will return soon. Yet momentum does not return by accident. It comes from choosing direction before the hours scatter. And sometimes the hardest truth is that drifting feels easier than facing a clear path. A simple pause can expose this. Just a breath. The drift becomes visible. People fear trivial things, but act like they have infinite time. A message left unread. A minor discomfort. A fleeting judgment. These spark more urgency than the slow leak of days slipping away. It's a strange imbalance. A mind quick to brace for small shadows, yet slow to guard what actually matters. Fear attaches to what is near, not what is important. And that habit carries a cost. The cost is subtle at first, then sharp once noticed. Time is not infinite. This fact stands quietly, waiting for acknowledgment. Time is surrendered choice by choice. Rarely in grand gestures, mostly in tiny concessions made without resistance. A few minutes lost here, a wandering thought there, a promise to begin later. Each choice looks harmless on its own, but they accumulate, forming a pattern that shapes a life. The Stoic path is not a rigid march. It is a deliberate return to attention, a steady hand on the inner reins. Every moment reclaimed becomes a reminder that direction is still yours to take. Hold that. There is a quiet moment when the mind steps back and observes the tension between effort and ease. It feels almost clinical, like watching two forces pull in opposite directions. One asks for comfort, the other asks for steadiness. And somewhere in that struggle, a truth becomes clear. The real turning point is not dramatic. It happens the instant discipline stands firm against the pull toward ease. That single choice decides more than it seems. It decides the direction of a life. Hold that thought. Let it settle. There is a slow erosion that begins when laziness slips in. It rarely announces itself. It moves softly, thinning self-respect one small decision at a time. A promise left hanging, a task postponed again, a quiet disappointment that grows heavier with repetition. And soon the mind stops trusting its own intentions. It doubts its own word. Nothing collapses loudly. It just fades. And the silence afterward feels sharp. There is a different feeling when discipline takes its place. It is not rigid, not harsh. It is simply an agreement honored without noise. A commitment that stands even when comfort whispers. There is a steadiness in keeping that promise to yourself. A sense of inner order that does not need applause. And each time the promise is kept, something inside aligns. Something becomes clearer, stronger still. There is a pattern to laziness that becomes familiar once seen. It is not a single act. It is a habit reinforced by surrender. Each moment of indulgence strengthens it. Each avoidance teaches the mind that resistance is optional. And the habit grows without needing much fuel. Just a little neglect. Just enough to weaken the inner guard. And suddenly, the smallest tasks feel heavy. Too heavy. Pause there. Let the weight of that recognition be felt. There is a reason to train the mind through chosen difficulty. Not to suffer. Not to prove anything, but to build the capacity to stay steady when life turns cold. Voluntary discomfort sharpens the edges that laziness dulls. It teaches the mind not to panic at resistance. It teaches the body that effort is not danger. And after a while, challenges lose their power to intimidate. They become familiar terrain, almost calm. There is a path out of laziness that is quieter than expected. It begins with expecting resistance instead of fearing it. It continues with routines that remove debate before effort begins. It grows stronger when temptations are reduced, not fought. And it deepens when discomfort is acknowledged and welcomed, even in small doses. Each step reinforces the others. Each act builds a different identity, and somewhere along the way, laziness becomes weaker. Discipline becomes natural. And the mind finally feels like its own again. An analytical look at direction always begins with a simple observation. Effort loses its strength when the destination is undefined. The mind feels busy, yet nothing moves. There is motion, but no shape. And the absence of shape quietly drains meaning. Pause. This is where the weight of clarity becomes visible. There is a quiet discipline in choosing to live with intention. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is a steady return to what matters, even when fatigue presses in and impatience tries to take over. Purpose does not appear on its own. It is built, slowly, deliberately, and every step asks for honesty. Breathe here. Vagueness feels comfortable for a moment, but it dissolves progress from the inside. Precision demands effort, yet it gives strength in return. It turns wandering into direction. It turns hope into action. A clear aim becomes a form of inner power. Simple, firm, but clarity is never free. It asks for choices that close certain doors. It asks for the courage to release what no longer aligns. The cost can sting, especially when old habits whisper for attention. Still, the path becomes lighter when unnecessary weight is set down. Let that truth settle. Once clarity is held, decisions become less chaotic. There is less noise in the mind. The heart stops chasing every impulse. A simple filter appears. Does this move me toward the life I want, or away from it? One quiet question, one grounding line. A personal manifesto can anchor this. Not a grand document, just a space where core values and long-term direction are written plainly. It becomes a reminder when emotions fluctuate. It becomes a mirror when self-doubt rises. And it keeps the mind from drifting too far from itself. Hold the center, yet clarity is fragile. It can be bent by noise, pulled away by expectations, or drowned by distractions that promise ease. Protecting it becomes an act of daily steadiness, a return to silence, a refusal to be carried by currents that do not belong to you. Stay close to your intention. Let it remain sharp. An analytical look at progress often reveals an uncomfortable truth. Genuine success rarely comes from flashes of inspiration. It grows from momentum, from the quiet force that builds when actions repeat, even when the mind feels flat. Momentum does not feel dramatic. It feels steady. And that steadiness becomes the hidden engine. A simple recognition. What moves you forward is rarely excitement. It is what you choose to continue. There is a quiet shift that happens when behavior leads and emotion follows. The feeling does not have to arrive first. The body can move while the mind lags behind. And in that movement, clarity returns. One small step can change the tone of an entire day. Action first, feeling later. A simple line. These small, uninspired actions leave deeper marks than the perfect ones performed in rare moments of enthusiasm. They shape who you believe yourself to be. A new identity forms in the repetition, in the way your hand reaches for the work even when your spirit hesitates. This is the quiet rewriting of the self. A slow turning, a subtle anchor. A life built on this principle becomes less fragile. It does not depend on mood swings or sudden bursts of will. It grows through consistent, sustainable movement, through the kind of pace that can be held when life becomes heavy or dull. Stability becomes the strength, a steady ground. Small actions compound in ways that are rarely visible at first. They gather weight, they gather direction, and little by little they create psychological momentum. A sense that forward motion is no longer an effort, but a default. The mind softens into it. A simple truth settles in. From this momentum, motivation rises. Not from philosophy, not from inspiration, from the lived fact that you are already in motion. Movement creates its own encouragement. A short line, a quiet reminder. The task, then, is steadiness. A gentle forward movement that does not break under pressure. It does not need speed. It only needs continuity. A pace you can return to, even on the dullest morning. Especially then. Daily minimums become the structure that guards this identity. Small, non-negotiable actions that keep the thread unbroken. They protect the momentum. They protect the story you are trying to live. One simple anchor each day. Just enough to stay in motion. There is a certain clarity that appears when looking at how a person changes over time. The patterns aren't random. The shifts aren't accidental. They follow the quiet pressure of the environment. It becomes obvious that growth or decline rarely happens in isolation. Something around you is always shaping the direction. Even on calm days, that influence moves quietly beneath the surface. And the realization settles in. Your surroundings are not neutral. The people close to you act like soil. Some nourish, some corrode, some keep you still. A circle can lift you without speaking a word, simply by living with intention. Or it can slowly dull you until you no longer notice the weight. The difference is subtle at first. Then it becomes everything. You feel it in your pace, in your patience, in your ambition. A social circle either waters your growth or poisons your potential. There is no middle state. There is a strange pull in environments that accept less effort. Mediocrity loves company, and misery never stops searching for new voices to echo it. It often approaches quietly, disguised as comfort, a slow approval of excuses, a gentle tolerance of stagnation. It feels safe until it isn't. Then one short moment of clarity hits. This is not safety. This is erosion. Choosing differently requires intention. Surround yourself with builders who act before speaking and follow through without noise. Their presence alone shifts your internal rhythm. Their discipline makes you question your own. Their steadiness forces you to see where you have stalled. There is a subtle challenge in being near people who carry momentum. It pushes without pushing. Being around builders raises your standards almost against your will. Their habits create a quiet pressure. A reminder of what is possible when effort becomes a constant rather than a burst. And in that presence, excuses sound thinner. Complaints fall apart faster. You feel a pull towards something higher. A short sentence echoes in the mind. Do better. Not everyone deserves that closeness. Distance yourself from those who drain your energy, even when they mean no harm. The exhaustion they create is real. It lingers. It slows thought. It shrinks courage. And staying near it for too long makes you forget what clarity feels like. A gentle retreat is sometimes the most honest form of care for yourself. There is a natural gravity toward spaces where serious individuals gather. You can feel the difference the moment you step in. Less noise, less distraction, more intention, more direction. Environments like that steady the mind. They remind you that consistency is not dramatic. It is quiet. It is deliberate. It is earned. Solitude is often misunderstood. Temporary solitude is better than permanent mediocrity. The silence gives room to rebuild inner discipline. It returns you to your own pace. It restores the sense of control that gets lost in the wrong crowd. And in that stillness, one truth becomes clear. Being alone for a while is not a setback. It is a reset. Eventually, the question turns inward. Become the type of person that better people want to be around. Not through performance, not through perfection, through steadiness, through responsibility, through a kind of quiet strength that others can trust. The environment you seek begins with the environment you create within yourself. And the thought lands softly. Choose the spaces that shape you toward who you intend to become. There is a quiet pattern that becomes clear when looking closely at how attention is spent. The mind reaches for easy stimulation when it wants to avoid itself. It feels small at first, almost harmless. Then it becomes a routine, a pause. Mindless consumption often hides this avoidance. It presents itself as a break. Yet underneath it is a way of slipping away from tension, doubt, or fatigue. There is a moment when the mind knows it is escaping, even if the body keeps scrolling. That moment matters. It is the hinge. Much of what is consumed does not soothe. It amplifies. Images, voices, and fragments of stories feed imagination and anxieties instead of grounding them. The mind begins to wander into places it never chose. And the wandering feels familiar, too familiar. Modern consumption offers comfort, yet the comfort is strangely empty. It softens sharp edges but also dulls inner clarity. The numbness feels safe, almost warm, and slowly becomes a default state. A quiet drift. Redirecting time from consumption to growth starts with noticing this drift, noticing how many hours dissolve without leaving anything behind, noticing how heavy the mind feels afterward. That awareness is the first step, just the first. Living deliberately is not dramatic. It is a slow and steady way of returning to oneself. Choosing what enters the mind with intention. Choosing what is worth the limited space inside. A simple choice. Attention shapes identity more than inspiration or ambition. Whatever holds the mind long enough leaves marks. Some marks strengthen, some weaken. A small truth. Replacing consumptive habits with learning habits requires gentleness and firmness at once. Not a strict crash of discipline, but a steady shift of direction. One small change in the evening, one in the morning. A quiet pattern. Knowledge only becomes real when it is practiced. Reading, listening, or watching is only the beginning. Integration happens in silence, repetition, and honest self-observation. It settles slowly. Very slowly. Consumption can still have a place, but it must be chosen, not fallen into. Used thoughtfully, it becomes a tool rather than a hiding place. It supports growth instead of replacing it. A deliberate act. In the end, the mind reflects what it is fed, and the choice of what to feed it is always personal, always within reach. A single moment of awareness can shift the entire direction. An analytical look at boredom reveals a simple truth. The repetitive work behind any form of excellence feels plain on the surface. The shine fades quickly. The rhythm becomes predictable. And in that quiet space, the mind starts to wander. This is where most give up. The task is still the same, but their patience collapses. A short fall, yet a decisive one. The urge to escape that feeling has become instinctive. Boredom is treated like a warning sign instead of a natural part of progress. A moment of stillness arrives, and the attention instantly looks for an exit. A scroll, a sound, a distraction, anything. The discomfort is tiny, but it wins often, too often. Over time, the world has turned this reaction into a habit. Constant stimulation surrounds every corner. Small hits of novelty disguise themselves as relief. And with each one, the tolerance for quiet work declines. The threshold for calm becomes thinner, a fragile state. Mastery does not grow in that environment. It asks for deliberate practice, the kind that repeats until the mind softens its resistance. It asks for focus that holds steady even when the task feels stripped of excitement. A calm endurance, a steady grip. Boredom itself becomes a test. Not dramatic, not heroic, just a simple measure of psychological strength. A quiet question. Can you stay with the work when the work no longer entertains you? A short question, a sharp one. Finding meaning in these plain moments is a skill. It does not appear automatically. It must be cultivated with care, like noticing the weight of each thought or the shift in your breath while you continue. A soft anchor, a subtle sense of purpose. This shift also requires changing how stimulation fits into daily life. Not cutting it out, not rejecting it, simply refusing to let it rule your decisions. A quieter relationship. More intention, less impulse. Daily routines help make that shift real. Routines that do not depend on how inspired you feel. Routines that stand even on dull days, especially on dull days. A firm structure. Progress then becomes something measurable in a grounded way. Not by how entertained you were, not by how exciting the moment felt, by the small actions completed, by the consistency held. A simple metric, a clean one. Deep presence is the thread that ties it together. Paying attention during routine activities sharpens the mind. It slows the internal noise. It makes the ordinary feel less empty. A gentle presence, a steady breath. In the end, the ability to handle boredom becomes a quiet advantage. It is not loud, not glamorous, but it creates a distance between those who continue and those who stop. A small edge, a real one. There is a point where analysis stops being useful and starts becoming an escape. That edge is revealing. It shows whether the mind is truly examining the path ahead or quietly searching for a way out. A quiet threshold. Important missions demand a different posture. They require the kind of focus that treats failure as something impossible to negotiate with. Not because failure cannot happen, but because the commitment leaves no space for hesitation. A single point of attention. Too much time slips away, fearing what might go wrong. The mind loops around imagined losses, imagined embarrassment, imagined collapse. Energy drains, opportunity fades, and all of it happens before any real step is taken. A simple pause. The weight of discipline is sharp, but clean. It stings for a moment, then shifts into growth that lasts. Regret feels softer in the beginning, but it spreads, it lingers, it settles deep and refuses to leave. A quiet ache. There is a way to avoid that slow decay. It comes from severing the exits that lead back to comfort. Some people burn their ships mentally, leaving no path but forward. Not out of drama, but out of clarity, a still resolve. When the option to quit is removed, the mind reorganizes itself. It stops bargaining. It stops waiting for perfect certainty. It begins to move with a steadier rhythm, because retreat is no longer on the table. A firm step. Thoughts about failure matter. They shape the response to the first setback, then the next, then the next. If failure is treated as a verdict, effort dies early. If failure is treated as a temporary guide, progress continues even in discomfort. A brief reminder. Failure teaches. Regret consumes. This distinction is not dramatic. It is practical. Regret locks the mind in a place where no action can be taken. Failure pushes the mind to adjust, adapt, refine. A small truth. Fear needs to be examined with a calm lens, Not pushed away, not obeyed, just observed until it loses its exaggerated shape. When fear is seen clearly, decisions become cleaner, a steady breath. Goals become solid when treated like matters of survival, not life or death in the physical sense, but in the sense that they define direction, meaning, and inner strength. Approach them lightly, and they dissolve. Approach them fully, and they anchor the entire day. A silent vow. There is only one real failure. It is the moment a mission is abandoned completely. Everything else is a bend in the path, nothing more. A single truth held quietly. An analytical look at the moment shows something simple but often ignored. Time is indifferent. It moves with or without your consent. It does not pause for confusion or hesitation. It does not slow down when you are lost. It keeps advancing, steady and silent, while you debate your next step. And in that quiet march, a truth becomes hard to avoid. Time is moving whether you are building or not. There is a subtle comfort in letting the world decide for you. It feels easier to lean into the role of someone being carried, someone pushed around by circumstance. But that posture drains strength from within. It turns the mind soft. It blurs responsibility. And the longer it stays, the heavier it becomes. Do not spend your life playing the role of a victim. A shift can happen, though. A quiet one. A choice that is not dramatic, but firm. To stop waiting. To stop drifting. To design, even if the design is unfinished. To build, even when the materials feel rough. Become the architect of your destiny. Every possibility ahead of you is held together by something fragile, but real. Action. Thoughtful, steady, deliberate action. Not the rushed movement born from panic. Not the scattered effort that burns out by noon. Just the next step, carried out with intention. Your future needs your action, and the building of a life asks for more than enthusiasm. It asks for discipline that steadies the mind, clarity that cuts through noise, momentum that grows from repetition, environments that pull you forward instead of draining you, consumption that sharpens rather than numbs, a tolerance for boredom that keeps you grounded, a commitment that does not retreat when the path gets cold. Build your life with these things, one layer at a time. There is always a negotiation happening inside, a quiet exchange between what strengthens you and what weakens you. Some days the weaker voice sounds softer, kinder, more familiar. But comfort often arrives, disguised as relief, while quietly stealing your edge. Stop bargaining with weakness and begging for comfort. The cost of waiting grows. It accumulates in ways not seen at first. Days blend. Motivation fades. Confidence thins. And reclaiming direction becomes heavier with every delay. Act with urgency, because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to reclaim your destiny. And still, the choice remains steady before you. Not loud, not dramatic, just present. A simple direction offered by the quiet part of your mind that still believes you can build something worthy, something grounded, something clear. This is the moment to honor that voice. Build.